To round off lesson 1, let's introduce the concept of variables. So by definition, a variable is something that is dynamic, it can change. That's what variables suggest. So in the same way, variables in programming are also just simply a container that can take different types of values. So what's a variable? You can think of it like a box with a label. So in this box, it contains a certain value, and the box also has a label, and the label will tell us two things. One is the type of content it holds, as well as the name of the box. So in the case of Python, the type of content can have many variations. So it can be a string, like we have seen. It can be a string of characters or alphabets. It can also be a round number, which is an integer. Or if the number has decimals, then we will consider that a float. So if the type for this variable is an integer, we will expect that the value that is stored inside the box is a round number. So that is the implication of knowing the type of content. At the same time, the box will also have a name, which is on the label. So this name, in this case, it is up to us to decide. We can say that the name is X. It can be Y, it can be Z, but there are certain rules that the name has to follow, which we can see here. So the name always has to start with a letter or an underscore, cannot start with a number. It can only contain alphanumeric characters, means no exclamation mark, no hashtag, and so on. And it is case sensitive. So capital X and small letter x are different variable names. So let's take a look at an example. So let's say, for example, we declare a variable called x, and by just simply putting x equals to 10.5, we have created a variable called x. So x is the name, and the type is, when we put type bracket x, we see that it's a float. So earlier we mentioned that on the label there are two things. What is the name? In the name is x, and what type of content? It contains a float. So let me just give you another quick example. Y equals to 10, and if we run what is the type of y, we get integer. Int is short for integer. So always remember that there are always two things to remember about a variable. One is what is the name of the variable. Second is what is the type of value it can hold. Finally, of course, whenever you see y henceforth, it will take the value of 10. So for example, if I print y or I type y, you see that the value 10 appears. So that gives us a basic understanding of the concept of variables. So there are many reasons why we want a variable to be stored, and one example could be if you went to the grocery store and you wanted to calculate the final bill. So imagine that you bought 3 apples, 2 pears, and 4 oranges. So now we can use variables to save the price of each apple, each pear, or each oranges. So let's see how it is done in the code. So now this line declares a variable called apple, and we can store the value of 35 cents. This means that each apple costs 35 cents. Same thing for pear and same thing for orange. So if we bought 3 apples, we just need to put apple times 3, 2 pears, pear times 2, and 4 oranges, orange times 4. This line also creates an additional variable, and this variable, can you guess what it is? It is total price. So if I run this line, first I declare the 3 variables. Next, I calculate the total price, which is a calculation based on whatever I put on the right hand side. And now as I print, it will be print out the total price, which is what we see right here. Did you notice something interesting about this print statement? Somehow, we didn't include the inverted commas when we printed the total price. Earlier, whenever we printed a string, we were always required to put the quotation marks. So in this case, we didn't have to, because whenever you want to refer to a variable, you do not need to put the quotation marks. Or rather, I should say that whenever you want to refer to the value that is stored inside the variable, we don't need to put the quotation marks. So just to demonstrate, if you put the quotation marks, what is printed is total price. It does not print the value contained inside this variable. Printing without the quotation mark gives you back the value stored by the variable. So to end off this lesson, I'm going to talk about variables that can also be strings. So when we saw earlier, when we saw strings, they are actually characters. So we can also assign, for example, a set of characters into a variable called myString, and using double or single quotes gives us the same result. So let's take a look at that. So whether using double quotes or single quotes gives us the same result. And when we look at any potential issues when using double or single quotes, can you think of any? What if you needed to use double quotes as part of the sentence? So in those cases, you might accidentally close the quotation or close the string. So you may need a situation, it might be a situation where you need to actually join two strings together. So strings being strings as a variable also comes with certain functions that help makes your life easier. So for example, if I wanted to print out the length of my string, so that gives me 12. How do I get this value? So HELLO, that's 5, space 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's how they get 12. So using the dot upper method, it will print out the string except that all in uppercase. Dot lower, same thing, all in lowercase. So I can also combine two strings together using the plus operator. So previously you saw the comma, now I use the plus operator to combine. Only difference is that plus does not automatically help you to add a space between the two strings. And if I wanted to create a new variable and assign this entire text into this new variable, then I can declare a new variable called new string and put in on the right hand side what I want it to hold. Printing it, it will give me hello world, my name is Joshua. Hello world comes from my string. My name is Joshua comes from the additional text that we have added. Other functions include, for example, replace, where whenever they see hello world, they will replace it with welcome. So when I run this line, it will say welcome, my name is Joshua, and is alphanumeric, being false, meaning that the string does not contain only alphabets and numbers. So for example, there's the exclamation mark as well as the space, which are not alphanumeric. So last thing, we can actually define or force the variable to take a certain type. So for example, if I wanted apples to be whole and integer, I can put int bracket 1. That will make it integer. Float will make it a float. So if we see the type accordingly, we see that orange is float because of this, and apples are integer because of this. We also note that if you multiply an integer by a float, automatically the result becomes a float. So that brings us to the end of lesson 1. In the following chapters, we will see more complex variable types that can do more sophisticated functions. So to round off, we have installed Python. We have gone through how to use Jupyter Notebook. We have also helped you to run your first program. And finally, we have also uh, introduced the concept of variables to you. So we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.